You're going to find out today that I have a whole lot of love for my favorite rock and roll band. I'm Paul DeGarabedian, Senior Media Analyst for Comscore, and I'm sitting amongst all of my Led Zeppelin albums, memorabilia, books, and my favorite Les Paul guitar, my 2012 Tobacco Burst, because I just saw Becoming Led Zeppelin, saw it the other night on the big screen at our local movie theater. And wow, what a knockout of a documentary directed by Bernard MacMahon and featuring the surviving members of the band, plus some great insights from the late, great John Bonham, the greatest rock and roll drummer of all time, Bonzo, well represented in the documentary. And it's great to see John Paul Jones, Jimmy Page, and Robert Plant react to what John Bonham is saying in a recorded interview, very rare interview that he sat down for years ago. And the movie really just takes you on a journey, and really for the first time, this is a authorized documentary. There's a lot of really pretty bad documentaries using found footage and not even the actual Led Zeppelin music that are all over the streaming services because everybody loves Led Zeppelin, but they've never really sat down for an official documentary signed off by the surviving members and clearly their families and their heirs, who I think really want to get this great story out there. And when you realize the depth and breadth of what Led Zeppelin represented back in the late 60s in terms of a musical revolution, it's really extraordinary. Jimmy Page clearly was the architect of their sound and their image. I mean, he was playing guitar from when he was a little kid, took the guitar with him everywhere. He famously played on a lot of amazing recording sessions. Shirley Bassey, the Goldfinger theme, he played on that. John Paul Jones as well, which I didn't know. He played bass on the Goldfinger session. And so, that great John Barry composition. And so you just find out a lot about the musicianship of these players. And then to have Jimmy Page looking for a singer and heard about Robert Plant and saw him sing. And then Plant brought along his favorite drummer, John Bonham. They had been childhood friends. And the result was magic. They did a jam session out of which came this, light bulb moment that they were going to be the biggest rock and roll band in the world. I don't know if they knew that at the time, but what Jimmy Page did, and it's really sussed out well in the documentary, he decided the band would pay for, and along with Peter Grant, their incredible manager, that they would create the album Led Zeppelin I and deliver it then to Atlantic Records finished. So they had complete creative control. The album was done. They realized they had something very special. And when that first album came out, people were just blown away with that opening track, Good Times, Bad Times, Side 1, Led Zeppelin 1. I have a lot of Led Zeppelin albums, and I'll get into this real quick in no particular order. So I've always said Led Zeppelin 3 is my favorite Zeppelin album. It has a lot of instrumental diversity in it, meaning there's mandolins, there are tracks that are not hard rock at all. There are tracks that are very almost folky in nature and not super hard rock, as was Led Zeppelin 2 that was recorded while they were traveling the world touring. And Led Zeppelin 1, much like the Doors' first album, was they were ready to go and recorded that in a very short amount of time. But Led Zeppelin 3 was songs like, the Immigrant Song actually kicks off the record in a really strong rock and roll note. But the song Friends, Celebration Day, Since I've Been Loving You, which has one of the greatest kick drum tracks ever. You can hear Bonham's kick drum pedal squeaking during the track, especially if you have a really good sound system. I have a huge box set of Led Zeppelin 3 that I have right here. And we'll get to this other piece of memorabilia in a minute. But to give you an example of what is in this box set, it has a print that comes with it. It's sort of like my soundtrack unboxing videos, or where I featured movie soundtracks. I'll put a link to that in the description below. But I love this cover as opposed to the original artwork. Very different take. This kind of cool stuff you get when you buy these can be quite expensive box sets, but worth every penny. There's a massive book in here as well. I'll put up some images of this, but you have pictures of the tape boxes and other really ephemera that goes into extreme detail in these box sets. Just kind of jumping around here, this is, and with provenance and a certificate of authenticity, there was to be a stadium performance by Led Zeppelin, and then unfortunately and tragically, John Bonham passed away. So these tickets were for a concert that never happened, Chicago Stadium, Wednesday, November 12th of 1980 at 8 p.m. That was supposed to happen, didn't. A whopping ticket price of $15, mail order only to get your tickets. Very different than today. And then a great picture of the band right here. So that's really cool. And then over here in the corner, hope this doesn't fall, right here is one of my favorite photos of the band, just rocking out. I believe this was at the Fillmore West very early in their career. You have John Bonham on drums, Jimmy Page rocking right here, Robert Plant with his huge amount of hair, his golden locks flowing. And you can, the only part John Paul Jones you see is the tuning keys on his bass, but still really cool nonetheless. So I've got a lot of books. Actually, my favorite book is this one right here. I like to put it up so it looks like I'm Jimmy Page, but I'm not. Look at that. So this book, my wife and I, Stephanie, we went and saw Jimmy Page interviewed by Chris Cornell of Soundgarden. And everyone who went to that, this was several years ago before Chris Cornell unfortunately passed away. And they gave a book to each of us who bought a ticket to go see it. It was an interview only, no music at all, but we each got this book, this Jimmy Page book. So that was really, to see Chris Cornell interviewing Jimmy Page, it almost sounds like a dream, like that wasn't real, but it really happened. I have other books about Jimmy Page, the anthology. This is a really cool one too. And I mean, gosh, I found out when I was going through all my collection that I'm just obsessed with Led Zeppelin. I think I have other books as well. This one goes through every song, Misty Mountain Hop, right there, featured. Led Zeppelin. This book is really cool too. This is the complete concert chronicle. You know, they toured like crazy back in the day. And Peter Grant, who is featured, their manager, he was one of the first managers to both, he was physically imposing, which actually helped, and in him getting great terms for his band and getting the proper money from the venues. Here's Led Zeppelin 2, an amazing album, of course. A whole lot of love kicks off this album. And Jimmy Page really points out how he didn't want them to be a singles band. He didn't want Led Zeppelin to have these singles out on AM radio. He really was going for that album rock presentation, and he would actually, in the mixing or the mastering of the album, of their albums, he would have songs blend into each other. He put that really incredible psychedelic sound instrumental break with a theremin and other special effects in the middle, a whole lot of love. Although I have heard radio edits of that, but Jimmy Page is really fixated on a big, bold sound. And you can hear that if you listen to a lot of records from the late 60s, they sound really thin in terms of the bass and drums. But you put on Led Zeppelin 1, you're talking 1968, 69, 70, boom, those albums have a lot of bottom end, and you have to if you have John Bonham on drums and John Paul Jones on bass. And then, of course, Robert Plant's voice soaring above it all, Jimmy Page's arrangements. He also produced the albums. For an artist of his stature to have that much control, creative control, right down to every detail. There are nuances in some of these songs. You listen on headphones especially, you're blown away. They have weird sounds. You hear them kind of, not necessarily counting in a number, but you hear them kind of talking or a little bit of tape echo right before a song comes on. So I encourage you, if you're not a Led Zeppelin aficionado or you're not even a fan, you will become one. I think this happens a lot. Movies do that, documentaries as well. With the Bob Dylan movie, A Complete Unknown, I know a lot of people were kind of lukewarm on Dylan and now are like, holy crap, I had no idea what a genius he was. So that's really cool to see. Led Zeppelin, here's Led Zeppelin 1, Good Times, Bad Times, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. Just an incredible version of that song. Joan Baez actually did a version of Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. It's really cool. Here's more Zeppelin albums, Houses of the Holy, Physical Graffiti. I have Mothership, which is a giant mother of a box set of Zeppelin. So I'm just kind of surrounded by Led Zeppelin in my everyday life. I hope you are too. Anyway, I think I've done enough. I just encourage people to go out and see Becoming Led Zeppelin. The film has earned $8.7 million at the domestic box office, according to our Comscore data, and just over $10 million worldwide, with about $4.5 million of that coming from the IMAX presentations, which proves that it's not just about the IMAX huge screen, but the incredible sound that you get when you see a film in IMAX. So it's just great for music as well. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there. I am your biggest Led Zeppelin fan out there ever. I encourage you to listen to all their albums, whether it be on streaming, but preferably on vinyl and on a big sound system with some giant speakers. You can pretend like it's 1970 again and enjoy Led Zeppelin. So that's it for me. I'm Paul DeGarabedian, Senior Media Analyst for Comscore, and I'll see you, and hopefully, you never know, what if there's a future Led Zeppelin concert? Oasis is doing it, so why not Zeppelin? Dare to dream. I'm Paul DeGarabedian, and I'll see you at the movies listening to Led Zeppelin on the big screen.